Planning Subcommittee. Before we start, I need to just make a few housekeeping announcements. This meeting is held in person and is live streamed on the Southwark Council's YouTube channel. There are no planned fire alarm tests today, and if you do hear the alarm, if you could leave by the nearest fire exit and make your way to the agreed assembly point, which is at St John's Churchyard off Druid Street, and council security staff will guide you. The public toilets are located off the main reception area from whence you came, and you're to be reminded that this is a no smoking building, so please make sure that you do not smoke on the premises. Also, may I remind you to switch off your mobile phones and put them on silent whilst the meeting is in progress. Members of this subcommittee will not access the internet, send or receive emails, text messages or tweets concerning the business of the committee. I would like to remind speakers to use their microphones when speaking, as only the audio from the microphones is captured on the live stream, and not to place the mobile devices next to the microphones to avoid interference. The code for accessing the council's free Wi-Fi is uppercase F, lowercase r, 33, uppercase W, lowercase I, F, I, exclamation mark. And I would ask you to be considerate towards others in the room and take care not to disturb the proceedings. We do have apologies for this evening's meeting from Councillor Emily Hickson. We've not received any other apologies. Can we have confirmation of all voting members, please? Thank you, colleagues. Does any member wish to declare any interest or dispensation in respect of any item or issue to be considered at this meeting?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I am one of the ward councillors for the item 7.1, but I am going to listen to everything that I hear this evening and make my decision based on that rather than anything else.
That is noted. Thank you.
Likewise, I'm one of the ward councillors for item 7.2, but I believe that's been deferred from this meeting.
Well, we'll come to that.
Yeah, all right.
Right, thank you, colleagues. So we've got additional documents which have been circulated. We've got the members' pack and the addendum report, which I hope members have had an opportunity to read. In terms of the minutes, can we approve the minutes of the previous meeting for those of you that were...
Chair,
yes.
Just one change, and apologies for not notifying previously. Item 4 in the minutes, where I declared my interest in an item. The item was item 7.3, the item on Glengall Wharf, not the item on Hurley Crescent. So if that amendment could be made.
Has that been taken? No.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with the incorporation of the amendment, can we approve the minutes? The meeting held on the 12th of September. Thank you, colleagues. In terms of the protocol of this meeting, the officer will present, and then members of the committee will have an opportunity to pose questions to the officer, and then we've got objectors, applicants, anyone living within 100 metres of the application, and ward representatives, all of which have 3 minutes to speak. And on each case, members of the committee may ask questions. All right, and then we go into deliberations. In terms of, we did have 2 items on the agenda this evening. 7.2, application 21/AP 2514, 2 Somerford Way, London, SE16 6QW. Following a request from officers, I'd like to move that this item be deferred to a future meeting so that the impact of the development on metropolitan open land can be considered further. I would like to propose that we do defer that. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Livingston. So therefore, all those in favour? That is carried. Thank you, colleagues. So going to, so we've Just got the one item this evening, 7.1, application 21/AP 4199, India House, 45 Curlew Street, London, SE1 2ND. May I invite the officer to present the report, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll first run through the addendum, which is clarifying and providing further information on a number of points that came out of members' briefing last week. So, firstly, the applicant has provided additional information on the heights of the screens for the terrace, and these have been included in the presentation. I have circulated some larger A3 size plans because they're a bit clearer than what's attached to the back of the addendum. So the screen along the top of the seating area is 1.89 metres and adjacent to Tamarind Court is 2.2 metres. Members also asked questions about the material for the decking and whether it would cause a noise disturbance. The agent has provided the following information. The proposed decking will be constructed from a solid composite product, provided a technical spec for it. It will not generate noise in the way that a lightweight or aluminium product would do, and as such, it doesn't raise potential for disturbance. Members asked how many people would use the terrace at any one time, and the applicant states, maximum capacity of the roof terrace is 100 people. This is likely to be split as approximately 20 people for the area to the east, adjacent to Tamarind Court, which will be exclusively for the 5th floor suite, and 80 persons for the wider communal terrace, which will serve the rest of the building. Access to the 5th floor terrace will be via the eastern stair, with the communal terrace being accessed via the northern stair. Both access points would be available in case of emergency. And whilst the maximum quantum is set at 100 people, it's unlikely that full capacity would be reached apart from during isolated events. The time of day when most people are expected to use the terrace is at lunchtime when the weather is good. So a further condition is recommended to you to ensure that activity on the roof remains within the defined terraced areas and nowhere else. There are a number of gates shown within the screening on the terrace, and these should only be used for emergencies or for maintenance purposes. So the full wording of the condition is set out in the addendum report, but in summary, the gates within the screening would only be used by people mending the roof or, if there has to be escape from the roof. So members asked for further information on the lighting that would be installed around the decking. The applicant has responded that this is not fully developed yet, and as such we're recommending a second additional condition, which the applicant is happy with, that further details of a lighting plan showing the position, type and illumination levels of the lights to be installed on the terrace shall be submitted to the local planning authority prior to installation. The applicant has expanded by saying that wide-scale lighting is not envisaged for the terrace, but the final design could be approved by this condition. They've also said that the terrace is already limited by a condition in the main report to 7 o'clock. Clearly an outdoor terrace would mostly be used in the summer when lighting wouldn't be required. Come 7 o'clock in the winter, it's going to be dark, you might need some lighting, but that would be the latest hour that the terrace could be used. Finally, members asked for additional information about possible noise arising from the access stairs to the roof terrace, and the applicant has said that the separate use of two areas minimises any concentration of users in the stairwells or immediately outside the stairwells. Furthermore, an exclusion zone is proposed outside the stairwell adjacent to Tamarind Court, which prohibits the installation of seating in that location to avoid prolonged stays in that area. We have also expanded on the impact of the development and on the setting of nearby listed buildings. The site itself does not adjoin any listed buildings. However, there are a number of Grade 2 listed buildings in the vicinity of the site. There's a map on paragraph 7 of the main report showing where the listed buildings are. Section 66 of the Planning Listed Building and Conservation Areas Act requires special regard to be paid to the desirability of preserving listed buildings and their settings, or any features of special architectural or historic interest they possess. So the main bulk and massing of the roof terrace, which is the terrace seating and the privacy screen and planting, would be set well back from the perimeter of the roof, and therefore is unlikely to be visible from close views of the building. The roof terrace would be visible in longer views towards the southern end of Curlew Street, where it meets Queen Elizabeth Street. But it's not considered that this would harm the wider setting or significance of the circle, which is Grade 2 listed, as it would only be glimpsed in distant views, and the brick flank wall of Vanilla and Sesame Court, which rises above the roof of India House, provides the backdrop. It is also anticipated that there would be some visibility from Shad Thames to the northeast of the site, where there is a break in the buildings between Wheat Wharf, which is Grade 2 listed, and Vanilla and Sesame Court, and also from within the courtyard. But similarly to above, the privacy screening would be glimpsed only at a distance and would not appear out of scale or character when viewed in conjunction with the neighbouring buildings. There are other elements on roofs, such as railings and plant and balconies in the setting. And in this context, the proposal would not have a harmful impact on the significance or setting of Wheat Wharf. So the roof terrace is unlikely to be viewed in conjunction with or within the setting of other Grade 2 listed buildings in the surrounding area, which are located at a considerable distance from the site and separated by other buildings of similar height. So in officers' view, the proposal would not harm the viewer's appreciation of the heritage assets, including their significance and settings, in accordance with policy P19 of the Southwark Plan. Excuse me. So moving on to the presentation and the main report. So just let me check. Okay, this item is for construction of a new roof terrace to serve the existing officers with privacy screens, decking and terrace seating, balustrades and lighting. Turn this. India House is a modern 6-storey office building located on the corner of Curlew Street and Gainsford Street. It's not a listed building, but falls within the Tower Bridge Conservation Area and within the vicinity of a number of Grade 2 listed buildings. And paragraph 7, as I said, includes a map outlining where the listed buildings are. The surrounding area is predominantly residential in terms of land use. So the site there is outlined in red. It's part of a sort of oblongish street block. Its immediate neighbours are Vanilla and Sesame Court to the northeast and Tamarin Court to the southeast. So Vanilla and Sesame Court on upper floors is residential flats. There's a nursery on the ground floor, and Tamarin Court is a residential block of flats. Here's an aerial shot of the building. I think I have a slightly better one available. How do I go back? Come on. Escape. Okay, so this again is the roof. So I'll point with my cursor. We have Tamarin Court here and Vanilla and Sesame Court here, and the roof of India House includes these two sort of long oblong structures, which are a sort of triangular roof lights. So the proposal is to, how do I go back to the email? Oh, to there, okay. Yeah, okay. Okay. So this is the plan you've just seen on the aerial with the two long oblong roof lights. The heavy black lines are the staircase accesses to the roof. There's various bits of plant and railings and what have you, sort of normal structures you see on roofs. So the proposal is to construct a roof terrace to serve the existing office building. The timber decking is the hatched area, the sort of light grey shaded parts of the roof. The terraced seating is along the lower roof light here. So it'll have sort of stepped seating, a bit like an outdoor theatre. And there are various privacy screens along here by a plant area, along the top of the seating area, around this part of the terrace, and here alongside Tamarind Court. So in terms of the elevations, these are the existing elevation. This is seen from Gainsford Street, and this is the back, which is what you see within the courtyard. And the proposal, so this is along Gainsford Street here. So this is the stepped seating area with the screen and planting on the top. You don't really appreciate the terraces. This is from the back, so this is the back of the stepped seating. And the other street elevation, so this is what's that road?
Curlew Street.
Curlew Street, thank you. The roof lights are these triangular structures. This is Vanilla and Sesame Court here. So that this is a long area of screening alongside some plant, and just behind it you have the stepped seating with the screening on the top. We've had quite a number of objections to this development and one letter of support. So the objections are listed on the right-hand side, the design quality and impact on the conservation area, including local views, the impact on neighbour amenity in terms of loss of privacy and light, sense of enclosure, noise disturbance and light pollution, safety and security, impacts on adjoining buildings, transport and highway impacts, I think primarily during the construction phase, and comments were made about the level of consultation undertaken, but once we were aware of the local interest, additional consultation was undertaken. As you can see, we sent out 198 neighbour letters and also displayed site notices around the perimeter of the block and posted a press notice as well. And we've had one letter of support. So there are a number of key issues for members to consider. One that you don't have to consider is a land use issue. It's an office block, it's remaining as an office block. The terrace is proposed to enhance the existing office accommodation. Some of it is vacant, I believe, at the minute, and the provision of an outdoor amenity space for office occupiers is considered to promote staff well-being and support the building potentially being reoccupied by office workers. In response to the letters of objection we've had, the application has been fairly substantially revised in order to address the issues raised by local residents. And subject to the installation of the screens, we consider that there is no detrimental loss of privacy to adjoining occupiers. There's quite a good separation distance between this roof and its nearby neighbours, and the terrace seating, privacy screening and planters are set back from the edges of the roof. and are not to be of such a scale that they would give rise to harmful loss of light or undue sense of enclosure. The windows and balconies in adjoining buildings don't directly face the roof terrace, so the outlook from these buildings would not be obstructed. We sought advice from the Environmental Protection Officer, and they noted there would be a slight increase in noise. They did not raise objections, but considered that an hours of use condition would adequately deal with any potential noise disturbance to near neighbours. And as I described going through the addendum report, the issue of light pollution will be examined when the lighting plan is submitted, but I understand that the lighting is going to be fixed to the inner face of the parapet wall and it'll be low level, so details to be approved. There shouldn't be substantial overspill to neighbours, and we recommend it's turned off at 7 o'clock. It's just a couple of photographs to give you the context. So this is standing on the roof looking towards Vanilla and Sesame over here. This is the slope of the roof light where the terrace seating is going to be installed. Again, you can see Vanilla and Sesame in the background there. This is a view towards Tamarind Court. This is the staircase access to the private terrace, the smaller area. So there's a position here where a screen is proposed, and it's to the top of the staircase. I think it's 2.2 metres high here, in filling that space. And this is a view to the opposite side of the road. Wolfson Court is student accommodation for the London School of Economics. So there's only this small window in the side elevation across the street. So a further issue raised by objectors is the appearance and design of this development. No objections have been raised by our colleagues in the Design and Conservations team. The main bulk and massing would be sufficiently set back from the edge of the roof and therefore not visible in close views. It would be glimpsed in views from Curlew Street and Gainsford Street at a greater distance. However, these would be in the context of other parapets and roof railings in the areas and other rooftop activity, including balconies and roof terraces and plant and ducts. There may be glimpsed views from Shad Thames and from within the courtyard. However, it would not appear out of scale or character with surrounding buildings. The materials proposed are timber decking, timber screening and planters are considered appropriate in the context of the site. Condition 3 of the recommendation requires further details so that the precise finish and colour can be considered and made sure that it's appropriate. And I expanded on the impact on Grade 2 listed buildings during the supplementary, but in our view, the development is compliant with Section 66 of the Planning, Listed Building and Conservation Area Act, where decision makers are required to pay special attention to the desirability of preserving listed buildings and their settings. I've got a few more photographs just to give you some context. So the white building is our application site, and the small buff-coloured strip above is the flank wall of Vanilla and Sesame Court. So the stepped seating and the planter would be just about visible in that view, set against the backdrop of Vanilla and Sesame. This is a view from Gainsford Street. Again, it's the white building. I don't think you will see it from there, certainly not in that face-on view. This is the rear, the courtyard. So it's the white building here. There's a rather nasty bit of telecoms there. You probably will see a darker strip across the roof, which will be the screening and terraces. So the final issue for members to consider, the application was accompanied by a fire management plan and some supporting information, and it does deal with the majority of the criteria in policy D12, which is the fire safety policy of the London Plan. There were some minor gaps of information relating to the fire alarm sounder and the fire resistance of the privacy screen, and we're recommending a condition, that's condition 3, that these details are submitted before the development is begun, I think. In our view, the privacy screens prevent those who are using the roof terrace from accessing the balconies of adjoining buildings. They're well above head height, and it is a private terrace, so I don't think it will offer an opportunity for, bad behaviour and nefarious activities. And condition 5 in your main report recommends that details are submitted detailing how loose garden furniture would either be stored or secured in place to be submitted for approval. This was an issue raised by a number of the residents to make sure that any, seats and whatever are not sort of blown around or moved around the roof, possibly causing some public danger. So subject to the conditions in the main report and the 2 additional conditions in the supplementary report, the application is recommended for approval.
Right, thank you, Alison. Okay. Do members have any questions that they would like to ask the officer at this juncture? Emily, go ahead.
I've got quite a few. Apologies, Chair. So I think probably doing them one at a time is best. But obviously, you've mentioned that the site sits within the Tower Bridge Conservation Area. I was wondering if you could sort of talk to we've seen quite a few applications go in for kind of rooftop developments within that conservation area. I was wondering if you can kind of talk to the impact that any sort of like kind of cumulative impact that the developments sort of proposed in that area could be on the conservation area.
Each application is determined on its merit, so we look at the pros and cons of each application individually and within their context. I think a more substantial application, for example, a rooftop extension, has much more of an impact because it, over time, the heights of buildings will increase and then possibly you want to go higher again. So I think that has a more substantial impact on a conservation area. This is some fairly limited alterations to a roof, which are set well within the middle of the roof and don't, from many views, the building won't look any higher. So the kind of parapet line, which is pretty uniform in this block, is not going to increase. I think if it was closer to the edges of the building or there were more substantial alterations proposed, that would certainly have a more significant impact on the conservation area. But if I go back to the roof plan, I mean, this is not a roof with nothing on it at all. It has a stair and plant enclosure here. It has a stair over in this corner. It has a plant enclosure here. And the most significant intervention, the stepped seating and the screen on top, do not, as you see here, there are other higher elements already within the roof. So in our view, it's a fairly limited intervention on the roof of this building.
I was going to say, if no one else has any questions at this point, I don't mind continuing. If that's okay.
No, go ahead.
No, thank you for
additional
that.
hands up, so, yeah.
So I was wondering, obviously this is sort of an increase in the floor space of the office currently already here, and I was wondering if you can kind of sort of, it seems to me as though this is sort of an intensification, as it were, of the floor space of the office in obviously what you've identified as a predominantly residential area. And I didn't know if you could sort of speak to that sort of intensification of use, and then whether I know that Southwark Council has a sort of policy of 10% affordable workspace where you're sort of bringing forward new workspace. I was wondering whether you could kind of speak to whether this application should be sort of subject to that requirement as well.
There is no increase in floor space of the office. It's a part. That part of the building already exists, albeit that it is used for. I mean, there's some plant on the roof, so it's used for sort of supporting the office accommodation. I mean, the intention we understand from the agent is to just make the offices a nicer place to work, so that people who are working in the building have the opportunity to go up to the roof and maybe have a lunch break. On a good day, you might be able to have a meeting out there. But in terms of the council's policies for affordable workspace, there's no new office floor space associated with this application.
Any additional questions, Councillor Tester?
I'll do one more at this stage, and then I'll leave the rest for later on. But I've kind of noted within the report, it says that there's no requirement for a kind of construction management plan with this one. And obviously you noted in the kind of consultee responses that there were quite a lot of concerns about sort of highways impact. And I don't know how familiar you are with sort of the Shad Thames area. It's lots of very narrow streets, obviously real difficulties with any large vehicles reversing and things like that. And, I certainly, the pavements aren't particularly wide. A lot of people walk in the road, particularly on Curlew Street as well. And I wonder, would there be, potential for us having a requirement for a construction management plan just in sort of that managing the kind of highways traffic in for any construction? So I think that would be really valuable.
It's something that certainly can be considered. We do put it on some smaller developments. I mean, it's normally appropriate for very large developments where you're having to scale, sort of schedule big lorries coming in with big bits of steel. I mean, I imagine the actual work proposed is not enormously substantial, but I mean, delivering to the site, the road probably will have to be closed if they have to put a crane in. So, I mean, we could certainly include that. Yes, there's no reason not to. I mean, if you think that would certainly go some way to overcoming some of the residents' concerns, we can add an additional condition.
Right. Dennis, at this point, would you be able to clarify that's something which we could incorporate and stipulate?
Certainly, Chair, if you consider that necessary, the applicant is coming forward at some point to talk on the application, something that you can ask him.
Seek clarification. Yeah. Thank you. I've got Councillor Livingstone, Councillor Tester. Thank you for those
Thank you.
questions.
I was just going to ask, do we know how many people work in the building?
I don't know the answer to that, Councillor. Some of it's vacant at the minute. I would think it's going to be hundreds. I mean, if they're looking to a maximum of 100 on the roof terrace, that's probably quite a lot less than the whole building could accommodate at any one time. That might be a question the applicant has up their sleeve.
Right. Any additional questions for the officer at this point? Thank you. Thank you, Alison. So I've got objectors registered in attendance here today. Hilary Shack, is Hilary Shack here? Kathleen Ehrlich and Aileen Murray. Right, if you'd like to come forward, Have you decided in advance who's going to speak? Righto. So, as you heard in my opening remarks, you've got up to 3 minutes. So, you can share that, or one of you can actually speak for the full duration of the 3 minutes. Can I ask the officer to take the time and give us a 30-second warning?
No, sorry, I'll do that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. If you can introduce yourselves first and then tell me what your plan is, please.
So my name is Hilary Shack. I'm here to object to the plan. I am a resident of Vanilla and Sesame Court, and I live about 2 metres directly next to where the proposed development is.
And I'm Kathleen Hogan-Ehrlich. I'm the chair of the Shad Thames Residents Association and a resident who also lives within 100 meters of the development. I'm here to represent the board of the Residents Association and cumulatively the residents of Shad Thames. Hillary's going to speak first and I'll go second with the remainder of time.
Righto.
Well, the plan is I'll speak for 2 minutes. I put my phone away because I got frightened that it might, as you say, it might interfere. So if you could be very kind, just give me a 2 minutes and I will hand over very swiftly to Kathleen, who will conclude. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to focus on a couple of points as time doesn't permit me to cover all the points. The first one is noise disturbance. The words used in the planning report is it's going to be a slight increase in noise levels will be experienced by the residents nearby to the roof terrace. And the Environment Protection Team, interestingly, admit there's no standard methodology to measure that noise. So let's apply common sense here, right? 100 people, any time of day, any day, except Sundays, fair enough, speaking, laughing, joking, banging, singing, drinking, possibly even doing their Zoom calls from the terrace in the afternoon on a sunny day, atop a predominantly residential courtyard. There are about, I think, realistically about 700 flats in that courtyard, all residential. I think you mentioned there was you've canvassed 189 letters. A lot of people were not advised at all of this. So anyway, the courtyard's already been proven to create echo and amplify noise. Note that Wheat Wharf is currently going under essential maintenance. I invite you, any of you councillors, to visit that, currently the noise that we have to put. So it's not going to be a slight increase, it's going to be a severe increase in the noise on that, and so will impact many flats, I reckon about 3,000 residents, all Southwark residents. If they work from home, they're going to have to keep their windows closed to be able to work. If they're home during the day, listening to TV, having a little nap, they're probably going to have to keep their windows closed. If they want to sit on their own balconies and enjoy the sunshine early evenings, they'll be able to hear that noise. I'm not sure about the screening. I haven't seen the latest plan, unfortunately, but I'm not convinced that it will be private if I sit on my balcony. You know, I think we will all be able to see each other. Restrictions have been suggested, but who's going to police those restrictions? The doorman at India House goes home at 5 p.m. every day, and he doesn't work at weekends. So what will happen between those times? 2 minutes, thank you. Okay, all right. Moving on to daylight and sunlight, report states that there's additional shading. The building will be the southern end of there, therefore it will directly impact the sunshine in the afternoon, where you get the sunshine, and the shadow of this development will directly impact Vanilla and Sesame Court and cast it into permanent shadow. And that's my conclusion, Kathleen.
I will just quickly say that we are very concerned with the cumulative impact of the number of stories that are being added to buildings across Shad Thames. There are currently 3 developments underway. This would be a 4th. There are 2 more under consideration by planning. We would draw your attention to Chapter 5 of the Tower Bridge Conservation Management Plan, which states that all roof developments are really not to be undertaken in the conservation area. And finally, and I can say more about this, we are facing some very serious licensing issues in our area. We're uninterested in having a public roof deck. There's another public roof deck under consideration right now. All of the roof decks in our neighborhood currently are private residential decks, and we have additional conditions that we'd like to see applied should this application be approved.
Do we have any minutes left?
Thank you. We can check with officers around rooftop developments and conservation areas. We'll seek clarification, because I'm sure this wouldn't have come forward if it wasn't policy compliant, but we'll check that. What additional conditions would you be interested in?
We would like to see the hours limited to a finish time of 6 p.m., and we would like no alcohol served or consumed on the roof deck.
And we would like to restrict Saturdays as well. There is currently no office work going on, so why Saturday?
Hours to limit 6 p.m, absence of alcohol entirely?
Yes, please. As I stated, we're facing a serious licensing situation in our neighborhood, and we already have a number of licensed businesses. Our buildings were made to carry sound, and most of them, as mentioned, are grade 2 listed, so people neither have double glazing nor air conditioning, which means that their windows closed or opened really don't muffle sound, and we feel that, voices are raised when people are drinking.
And the absence of use on Saturdays, is that correct? Is that what you said?
Yes, it's an office building. There isn't, why Saturdays? Most offices work 9 to 5 around that area, and not Saturdays. I say that currently there's no doorman, there's no security, the building is empty, other than essential maintenance, obviously, when they have to do essential maintenance.
To the applicant and officers. Colleagues, any questions for our objectors, please?
I was going to say, I've got one, if that's okay. You were saying that quite a few residents didn't receive any kind of consultation or anything from the council. Are you able to sort of talk about that a little bit more? Because I was kind of particularly concerned with the level of consultation that might have gone on with the student accommodation in the Butler's Wharf building there.
Sure.
So.
Okay. So, and I spoke with Louise on this. Yes. So there was apparently at Christmas time a couple of leaflets on the lampposts. I don't think anybody saw those. With respect, it just didn't happen. And then when I realised that I think it was going to come to this meeting in August, I phoned and said, "Hold on a second. We didn't know nothing about this." So at that point, the officer did send to all residents, or most flats within Vanilla and Sesame Court and Tamarind. Nothing went out to the student block. Nothing went out to Wheat Wharf. Nothing went out to all the other courts around it. And in fact, it was just because I happened to know, Kath, I just mentioned, there's this application for rooftop, and the Shad Thames Residents Association were completely unseen on it. This is when we then understand we then got an extension. But yeah, there was there was not enough consultation for the residents.
Well, that's in your view. Okay,
the facts were it only went out to 2 after I raised this with Louise. The 2 blocks were canvassed, but not any other blocks. That's the facts, as you say. Yeah.
Right. Okay, but it was reconsulted on. Any additional questions for the objectors, colleagues? All righty. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have the applicant present, please? Mr. Tim Price, is that correct?
Sorry, I'm a little bit croaked.
Right. Righto. If you could kindly introduce yourself and your role, and then you've got 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good evening, members. My name's Timothy Price. I'm a planning consultant for Savills, and I'm acting on behalf of the applicant this evening. So good evening, members. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the applicant, which is the owner of the host building. As you know, this application seeks to add an external amenity facility to an existing office building. The creation of high-quality amenity will benefit the employees of existing tenants and help to secure the reletting of vacant floor space. At present, approximately 15,000 square feet of vacant floor space exists in the building. That's approximately 30%. And that's been vacant for approximately 12 to 24 months, so it's long-term vacancy. Enhanced amenity provision such as external space is becoming an increasingly standard requirement for occupiers as they want to provide better working environments for their staff. To ensure businesses want to locate and invest within Southwark, it is essential that the borough has a supply of floor space that is fit for purpose. The external space provided at roof level will provide a dedicated area for employees to have their lunch or enjoy short breaks as part of a move towards greater well-being. This is a facility to be used exclusively by the occupants of the office floor space. It will not be available for hire, nor will it be open to the general public. The professional officers of the LPA have strenuously tested the acceptability of the scheme, undertaking careful consideration of matters such as appearance, noise and overlooking. The terrace will not be visible from the street level, and as has been set out in your officer's report, it's well separated and screened from any sensitive residential receptors. The main terrace space is focused on the south side of the building, closest to Gainsford Street and adjacent to the multi-storey car park. The proposed hours of operation will be tightly controlled so as to avoid potential for disruption early in the morning or later in the evening. And the proposed operation sits well within the established parameters of daytime hours. As set out above, the development will help to meet the day-to-day needs of office workers only. This is not a terrace associated with a restaurant or bar, and as such, the nature of use is very different and the prospects for impacts greatly reduced. There is an on-site building manager who will monitor access and ensure any use by tenants is appropriate and in line with the function as set out in this application. Now, we very much hope that you'll be able to support the application in line with your officer's recommendation. It will facilitate private sector investment and job creation within the borough and promote healthier lifestyles. Subject to your regulations allow it, I'll do my best to answer any questions this evening.
Right, thank you. That was pretty succinct. So we've got Councillor Livingston, followed by Tester, and followed by Hood. Thank you.
Yes, two quick questions. First of all, is the question I asked officers earlier to understand the number of people working in the building. I think probably both as it is now and when it would be fully occupied. And the second one is sort of a more general point. I understand your point about trying to make it attractive for businesses to move in, but and it's an area where there's plenty for employees already to do at lunchtime. There's plenty of places for people to go locally. So just really trying to understand why it is that the delights of Butler's Wharf and Chad Thames that already exist aren't sufficient for employees that would be working there.
So I don't have the specific figures for current occupancy, and what I would say is it changes regularly day to day. We anticipate based on density calculations of the quantum of floor space of the office building, maximum capacity would be about 160 people, something like that. But as I said, that will change. Many people now work from home different days. We have a far more kind of flexible and fluid working arrangement. So yeah, as I said, that's likely to go up and down over peak days. And then in terms of the requirements for space, well, yeah, I agree. There's lots of places in the local vicinity. Occupiers still want space locally within their building, because what they would like to do is people, you're nipping just to have a bite to eat or something. They don't necessarily want you to have to go somewhere else. There's a lot of corporate social responsibility around having amenity on site. So there's kind of credits awarded for that when people are doing things. So that's one of the key drivers why it is on site, not just using local facilities.
Councillor Tester.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if I could just get a couple of clarifications on a few points. So I think firstly, I kind of wanted to understand why you'd applied to have use of that space on a Saturday. I think secondly, it'd be useful to kind of get some clarification over the maximum capacity, because I think there's a bit of inconsistency between the two different reports that we've had, whether it's 100 or 120. And I think finally as well, in the addendum report, it says that the screen to Tamarind Court and to Vanilla and Sesame Court is 2.2 metres, but in the drawing that we have, it says it's actually 2.1 metres. So I was wondering if you're able to clarify which it is.
Lots of questions. Sorry, I'm just going to try and take Saturdays first. Thank you. I listened very carefully to the comments, and I fully understand some of the concerns around the potential additional risk at weekends, and I think they're fair comments. There's a desire to see increased working at the building because it has a productivity associated with it, but Yeah, I don't have my client here, but I think what I would say is they probably would understand that if they'd listened to some of the comments. So I think I'm happy to say, whether I get shouted at later, is to say that we would be happy to restrict it to Monday to Friday only. That we would be happy to restrict it to Monday to Friday only. So we would exclude Saturday and Sunday.
The other one was the actual maximum capacity
So
and then the heights of the screening.
Thank you. So actual maximum capacity, and I did clarify this to officers because I did note in the report there was a mistake. It is 100 people. Very clear, 100 people, not 120. That's the capacity. And then in terms of the height difference, you should have a plan which is the accurate information, and it's that's the one. So and what I would say is when we saw the image of the gap between Tamarind Court and the terrace, which is just kind of on the bottom right hand corner as you see it here, the officer presenting said we're filling in that gap. I'd like to be very clear, we aren't filling in that gap. It's quite a significant gap. What we're doing is we're adding about 60 centimetres to the top of the existing party wall to take that to 2.2 metres in total. We aren't adding a 2.2 metre screen, so what we're adding is that, basically 60 centimetres. So again, just to be clear, what you have on the plan is the accurate information.
Okay, yes, that's 2.1 metres, not 2.2, as it says in the addendum then. Cool.
Thank you. I think some of my questions have already been asked by my very studious colleagues, so I've just got two left on my list. Number one, you mentioned with regards to the times of operation and that these would be enforced by the building manager. Can you confirm that the building manager's role covers the times of operation then, so they can effectively police that? And then my second question's on one of the other objections that was raised about alcohol consumption. Is that a condition that you'd be willing to accept, that no alcohol could be served or consumed on the premises?
Yeah, we can confirm that the hours of operation will be controlled and will be controlled on site by a manager. And again, I understood the comments raised in respect of alcohol. I appreciate again that can create additional impacts because of the activity associated with it. So I don't think there'd be an issue with attaching a condition which would preclude the consumption of alcohol on the terrace, or the sale or production, or whatever the wording needs to be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Could I ask that to the planning committee if that's a condition we can include?
No, that's for the licensing committee.
Right. Okay.
Councillor Rule, no. Right, but through the chair, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you can condition that, but the licensing of premises is a separate process. They will still require to apply for a license through our licensing team, but you can impose that condition here if you feel that necessary.
Thank you very much. Yes, we can. And so you would be happy to reduce the operating hours to 6 o'clock?
No, we didn't say that.
No, I'm asking you.
Sorry, no, I don't think that would be possible, because I think in reality the working hours will probably extend. Again, we talked about flexibility, so I think the hours that were proposed at 8 in the morning to 7 in the evening would be really important, particularly if we're excluding Saturday. So I think I have to say that the applicant would like to retain those hours that, as I said in the speech, that they are set well within daytime hours.
Righto. So 7 p.m, but happy to operate without alcohol,
Correct,
in the absence of alcohol,
Chair.
and happy to operate between Mondays and Fridays.
Correct, Chair, yes.
Very good, thank you. Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if you're able to talk a bit more about the sort of material of the screening, because I kind of note that our officers had said that it was going to be sort of darker in colour, and I think obviously India House is a white building. Is there sort of a potential for it to kind of fit in a little bit more with the building itself, so it's less immediately obvious?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I don't think we've actually fixed the colour, and there is a requirement to submit details of the screens. So I don't think it was ever intended that it would be a particularly dark colour from our side. You make a very good point in respect to the building and the surrounds. So, yeah, very happy to have effectively the material and colour of the screening to be submitted to and approved by the authority.
Thank you. Esme, you were first. Thank
Thank you. Just a question about the gates that we have between the terraced area and the rest of the roof, and also the exclusion zone by the secondary staircase. Will it be the building manager tasked with enforcing those areas?
So the gates will only be, are only required for emergency access. So normal occupiers wouldn't have keys or facility to open gates. The gate that requires emergency access will be opened or will have an automatic opening system. In terms of the exclusion zone, the idea of just having that on the plan was to make sure that nobody can just put some furniture or stools there, such that because of the proximity to Tamarind Court you have people congregating. So effectively that's very clear. That little part of the terrace will form part of the private terrace for the 5th floor, so that detail will fit within the lease provisions for the occupier for that space, which is currently vacant. So effectively someone who takes that suite and knows that that's their terrace will understand what the requirements are, so that will be built into their lease arrangements.
Thank you. Councillor Roux?
Yeah, I was just wondering where the smokers will go.
I'm not sure. I don't know if smoking would be permitted or not. I haven't really thought about that. I don't think it's something that we've considered if it's an issue. I don't know, it's external, so I'm not sure we can stop people smoking or not smoking.
Yeah, even if it's external, I mean, so on the whole roof, would there be like a corner where the smokers would be banished to? Or would they allowed to be smoke all over the roof, if you know what I mean?
At present, there isn't a particular smoking area that's been designated. I suppose perhaps that's down to the operation of the building manager in conjunction with the tenants to see is that something that they as a kind of a business community want to do, but we haven't set that out at this stage, no.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions? In terms of actually managing the numbers and use of the roof terrace, how will that, are you sort of saying that the roof terrace manager will monitor that? How is it going to be, how are you going to monitor? What does the applicant envisage the monitoring of numbers on the roof? Because, 100 in one area, 20 in another, or is it, we had 20, so this is what I'd like to clarify. In the private adjacent to Tamarind Court, there's a space for 20, is that correct?
That's
so
correct.
Is that 20 plus 80 or
Correct.
100 plus
so to be
20?
100% clear, the maximum capacity for both parts is 100 people.
Righto.
We envisage that being split 20 people to the private terrace and 80 people in the wider communal terrace.
Righto.
In terms of the management of that, obviously,
Yes.
the 20 people will be dealt with by the 5th floor occupier because that's their private terrace. So again, built into their leases, you have a maximum occupancy of 20 people. A lot easier to control when it's actually built into their lease that they have to comply with that. The 80 people in the communal terrace, there'll be a sign-in, sign-out sheet effectively before you go up. So the number of people can be monitored, and that would be done by the site manager, correct?
That's clear. Thank you.
So, sorry, Chair, if I might add on that, because we don't really have a condition to secure that. So we normally impose what we call operational management conditions that would ensure that the building manager is present during the hours of use of that roof terrace and any other conditions that you might want to include.
So that's called, operational
management condition.
Righto. Okay.
Yeah. So then you can expand that to cover these, the smoking and other issues that you were talking about.
Righto.
Yeah.
Righto.
Do you just want me to add that we'd be happy with an operational management strategy? That's a requirement. And again, just to pick up the points by the councillor before, if construction management is a concern as well, I think the applicant would be very happy to incorporate that. As you mentioned, Chair, and I think the officer did, this isn't a substantial development, but again, just to give, I don't think we need cranes or anything like that, but just to give certainty, again, we'd be happy to do that. Thank you for your time.
I don't have any registered supporters listed in advance. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to? Okay, so do we have a ward councillor? We do, and if you could kindly, councillor, introduce yourself, tell us the ward that you represent, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Councillor Hamish McCallum for North Bermondsey Ward. I really want to address the committee briefly on two main areas of concern. The first is the impact to character, and the second is impact to amenity. In terms of character, you've heard this evening that the site sits within the Tower Bridge Conservation Area. Many, if not all of you, will be familiar with the Shad Thames area, as it's generally referred, with its historic nature and heritage, largely being a collection of converted warehouses now being in predominantly residential use. It's an area with a hugely unique character and of particular importance, I suggest, for our borough, given its location, its setting, where it is, its proximity to Tower Bridge and the like, and the number of people who use it. Very much a concern that exists in the community, which I absolutely share, is the sense of mission creep, if you like, at the moment in Shad Thames. There have been a number of individual buildings who have sought planning consent in the recent period for either rooftop extension or rooftop conversion, i.e. terraces and the like. Your officer said earlier that you, of course, look at each application individually, but then went on to say, and looking at it within its context. And that's the issue here, is that the context is evolving and changing in a way which isn't being controlled by Southwark's planning policy. So I say that in terms of the impact on the character of the area. In terms of amenity, we've talked a lot about that this evening. Clearly, where the terrace is located is very close to a number of residential flats, a number of which have balconies very near to the terrace. And that presents all manner of problems and concerns, both in terms of impact to light, overlooking, and also potentially a sense of enclosure to certain flats because of where the screening is going. But also, and perhaps I think most significantly, the risk of impact from the activity on the terrace itself. So noise and the like causing an impact to residents, meaning that they can't then use their flats or their balconies. We heard from the applicant just now that the maximum occupancy of the building is in the order of 160 people, and yet here you have a terrace being proposed for 100 people. That's almost 2/3 of the occupants of the building. It's quite clear on any kind of logical view that this isn't a terrace which is going to only be used for employees taking their lunch break or popping upstairs for a chat with a colleague. It's a terrace that could well be used within the terms of what's being sought for events or the like by the occupiers of the building.
Is up. Okay, thank you very much. Questions for Councillor McCallum. Councillor Vu?
Do you know of how many roof terracey things are nearby, roughly?
As in commercial terraces or private terraces?
Both.
I think I'm right in saying that the area is very residential and also very densely populated. So, the two buildings that are immediately adjacent to this block, Vanilla and Sesame, I think has in the order of 140 flats in it. Tamarind Court has in the order of 60 flats in it. It's that kind of style of architecture and building use. In the kind of nearby area, I think I'm right in saying that there's one other building which has recently developed or is coming towards the completion of developing a rooftop extension, which includes a terrace section. There's another which is currently seeking planning consent for the same, both within a stone's throw really of this building. Other than that, I think certainly the buildings in that area, I think, are all residential at the upper floors, aren't they?
So those two, are they both officey ones, or are they like some
Right,
flats have roof
sorry,
terrace?
councillor, can we just stick to this particular application?
Yeah, and are they office ones, or are they private flat ones, like block of flats ones?
So no, I don't think any of the private blocks of flats in the area have communal terraces. I think might answer your question. So the one that's recently been developed is a
sorry,
commercial.
councillor, I'm not going to take any further questions on other applications or other existing roof terraces. Are there any additional questions, councillor Livingston?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Councillor McCallum. I mean, looking at the plans that we have, it does show that the roof terrace very much hugs the edge of Curlow Street and Gainsford Street. So I just wondered, we've obviously heard concerns from people who live in the Vanilla and Sesame buildings about noise and how it will impact on them. Given that it feels quite set back from them, have you got any observations to make on that point?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I mean, whilst it might admittedly be on that side of the roof, it's not a huge building. It's not a huge roof. Noise carries in that area, and it almost carries because of the type of architecture that exists in that area as well. I mean, these blocks were originally built to enable dock workers to shout up at people working in warehouses. So it was almost designed as in a way that would allow noise to carry. I mean, I think there are particular concerns that have been raised tonight, and some of which have been touched on already. And I'll just say, I think to some extent they can be resolved by conditions. So I'll just emphasise a couple of those, if I may. I'm grateful to the applicant for confirming agreement that there should be no alcohol consumed on the terrace. I think that would be a welcome condition to add. Similarly, removing any usage on a Saturday. I would slightly push back, though, and ask you as a committee to push back in terms of the hours of usage during the week. 7 o'clock in the evening is not normal office. It's not a normal office. It's not within normal office hours, and I would encourage you to look at limiting the hours of use Monday to Friday to 6 p.m. as was suggested by the residents. I'd also just really encourage you to ensure that there's a condition that the building manager must be present at all times that the terrace is being occupied. And then I'd also ask you to consider whether, in fact, the occupancy can be conditioned at a lower level than is currently proposed. There is no. This is a block which is, certainly at the moment anyway, unless someone corrects me from behind, this is a block which is let out sort of floor by floor, or at least section by section. It's not one occupier of 160 employees taking all of their staff up to the roof for lunch one day. These are multiple different companies in a kind of shared office building. I can't see any situation where 100 people being up there is at all likely from a total occupancy of 160 combined staff. It just doesn't make sense, and so I would invite the committee to limit the number of people further as well. And then if I can just say one final thing on a related point, which is about smoking. This was asked, and thank you, Councillor, for raising this. I mean, I don't accept the applicant's position that that's not something that can be restricted. It absolutely can be restricted. It's completely within the gift of a building management provider to limit smoking in their premises, and we all, I'm sure, are familiar with pubs with outdoor beer gardens that have no smoking areas. Of course, that's possible to do. So I would invite the committee to also impose a condition that there can be no smoking. I think that just to say the reason for that is, I mean, obviously the risk of smoke blowing across the balconies goes without saying, but there's also, I think, a concern about the possibility that cigarette butts might get thrown. And I'm aware that the neighbouring building, in fact, has some cladding issues on its upper floors as well, wooden cladding issues, which need to be resolved. And so there is a safety concern about smoking on the roof, in addition to any amenity impacts.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Livingston.
Thank you, and well done, Councillor McCallum, on making maximum use of what was a fairly specific question. This is an even more specific question, which is just to understand what you believe the harm is of the usage between 6 and 7 in the evening. What is that harm that you think that we need to set a condition to manage?
Well, noise generated from 100 people being in a quite confined space within a few metres away from people's private residential amenity space. These are flats with small balconies. They don't have gardens. We're not in an area where there's not really any kind of communal public space at ground level in Shad Thames. So people really do use their balconies. In addition to that, a lot of the buildings, I confess I don't know whether this is true of Vanilla and Sesame and Tamarind, but a lot of the buildings in the area, because they're listed, can't have either double glazing or air conditioning installed. So there is a real issue about people kind of being completely dependent on doors and windows, balcony doors and windows being open in order to regulate the temperature inside of their flats. Obviously, at a point in the day when people are coming home using their properties. I mean, indeed, arguably nowadays with people working from home, this might be an impact to some extent during the day anyway. But there's clearly a particularly greater impact as you get into that early evening period where people are more frequently at home.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? All right, thank you, Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Jo.
It's good to see you.
You too.
Oh, sorry, just like to ask the applicant's agent, so would you be happy for an operational management condition to be put in place? Okay, so would you be happy for a no smoking area to be incorporated in that space?
Yeah, I have slight reservations about whether that's a breach of particular rights. I don't know. If the council consider it's not a breach of rights, then we're happy to...
Well, we've got a legal officer that can...
If you think that doesn't breach rights, then we're happy to agree if you think it's necessary.
I'll refer that to our legal officer, Alex.
Yeah,
Are you able to
conditions
comment?
do need to be reasonable and enforceable
Yeah.
and necessary. So I think that would be a very specific condition. But what we could do is make that part of the operational management condition, and it provides a bit more flexibility for officers to cover that.
To cover that. All right.
I think that's the sense, but I'm talking more about human rights issues about people's
Yeah.
ability to choose. So it's not whether the condition is valid, but I think consider it properly.
Righto, which is the advice which we've received. Would you be happy to reduce the number of occupancy on the maximum occupancy? I'm thinking that sort of around the larger terraced area of 80 that you said you stipulated. I understand that the private fifth floor terraced area would be a maximum of 20. Would you be prepared to reduce the occupancy for the larger terraced area by 10 or 20 persons?
So I'll just jump in there, just as again, I think that could be very specific and difficult to enforce. So again, we could possibly deal with that as part of the operational management plan.
Right.
So we could ask the developer to submit details as to how many people might be going on their one side, which then could form part of the plan, and again, it would provide some flexibility.
Righto, so we could incorporate that.
I think the operation can effectively take an umbrella approach to kind of the management, and again, yes, a number of occupants can be picked up as part of that. I would say we're reluctant. I don't think 80 people or 70 people makes a difference in terms of noise generation, to be perfectly honest. And I don't think it's unreasonable, but we're happy to submit that information as part of the operational plan, yes.
Righto.
Yeah.
That, again, once again, that's really helpful. So,
Yeah, that's fine.
is that perfectly
Yeah,
reasonable?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, same as in consultation.
In consultation, yeah. All
Yeah,
righty.
fine.
So,
I think that could be difficult again. Often when we do look for a resolution, we'd like it to be clear, and making it subject to third-party consultation just puts a big question mark on it. So what we've done in the past is officers could draft the condition and set out what it would involve, and we would discuss it with the chair.
right, chair of the residents.
Yourself.
Oh, to me. Righto. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor, could I say when we receive it as an approval of details application, we could consult residents on it rather than consulting them on the details of the condition.
Righto.
So more
Whatever
the
is going to be the
substance.
most efficient and
That's acceptable?
Can I just
Yeah.
clarify? It's that latter suggestion, that's
Yeah.
what I meant, sorry, it was consultation on the draft of the
Right,
as opposed to a consultation on the conditions to be drafted.
right.
Sorry,
Well, that's right. Okay. All righty. So,
Chair, I'm getting
that's
confused here. I'm trying to understand what would happen with the consultation. So if a proposal for this is put forward and local residents don't like it, what happens then?
It can be refused.
By?
Well, either by officers, normally by officers at a approval of detail.
Right, okay.
You know, if certain. The content of it may reassure residents that it will be managed and, sorry, that's just gone off, managed and their concerns have been fully dealt with, in which case it would be approved. But if there's some outstanding matters that are still of concern and officers assess it and consider they have merit, then the option is to refuse. So it's pretty much like any other kind of planning application.
So would it come back to committee? Is that what you're saying?
No, it would be an officer delegated,
delegated,
decision
right,
with
okay.
the benefit of residents' views.
Righto.
I think I just found that that's slightly extraordinary, but no, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Emily.
Are we able just to clarify what that operational management plan would kind of contain? Because I think the one thing we've not discussed is kind of having conditions about the building management being on site at the same time that the terrace is open, and we've also still not discussed limiting the sort of time to 6 as well.
The management plan will deal with many of these elements that have been discussed in the meeting. So, for example, how smoking is to be dealt with, whether it's not going to be allowed at all or if it's only allowed on a certain portion of the roof, for example. The number of occupants which has been raised. I think the applicant did express concerns about reducing it from the number that has been already said, but maybe there's some additional information about how they're managed, what times of day there might be maximum occupancy, that kind of thing. So you could look at whether it's times of day where it might be particularly disturbing. The issue of the building manager, that would be covered in the report. It would not cover the hours, though, because that is a separate condition.
To be perfectly honest, I think 8 till 7 is wholly reasonable. I don't know if members have a different view. Invariably, office workers do work late, and I think 7 o'clock is not a particularly late into the evening. That would be my view, and my view would be that I think that is a sufficient condition. Emily?
Thank you, Chair. I think my sort of view is that there's kind of a different sort of use as kind of, you know, casually having a lunch with your work pal and going up and sitting up on the terrace and getting some fresh air versus a kind of post-work sort of gathering. And I know that obviously if we're going to look at not having any alcohol, I think that will help. But I do think that they're kind of having that sort of post-work operation, I think, kind of offers a larger risk for sort of more disturbing kind of gatherings, if that makes sense, and having kind of large groups congregating and then kind of going off to other events. Certainly I've kind of worked in offices that have a similar sort of setup, and, you know, you do get a lot more noise generated in that sort of environment. So I think that would be my only concern with that slightly later operation.
Any other views on that? No? Everybody else sufficiently happy with 7 p.m. finish? I think that's perfectly reasonable. Thank you for your comments, Emily. So, yeah, Esme?
Thank you. Apologies if I've missed it. Have we dealt with the Saturday opening as well? So that's conditions off. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, Gerald. An additional condition to the ones already set in the report would be to have an operational management plan to incorporate the various conditions or operational issues that we've already discussed and I dare say have been recorded. We've had an agreement that the use of the terrace area from the applicant would be just restricted to Monday to Fridays. We've had an agreement that there would be absence of alcohol. At the moment, we've got members that have indicated that 7 p.m, so that the hours would remain the same and will not be part of the operational management issue to be considered. We've got the applicant has agreed to a construction management plan. Is there anything else that I need to cover?
Two additional conditions in the supplementary.
In the addendum.
In the addendum.
Yeah.
Righto.
These ones here. So that one, and so that and that.
And the two regarding the condition of the roof defined as a terrace, accessible non-terraced parts of the roof shall be purposes, links, gates, accessing non-terraced part. That whole paragraph that was the paragraph 6, extension of paragraph 6,
The illumination.
and the condition around the lighting plan, the illumination plan, to for officers to be consulted on that and to agree a plan around that. So does that now fully cover? Is there anything else that I've missed? Alison? Dennis?
Yeah, that's very comprehensive.
Righto. Well, with those, yes?
Can I clarify, is the alcohol issue a condition in its own right?
It's part of the operational management, is that?
Yeah.
I think it should be a condition in its own right.
Well, we've got a legal officer. You can't say that. I can put that to the legal officer. What is the in terms of the absence of alcohol?
Subject to planning officer's comments, but I think it could be a condition in its own right.
Okay, so we've got outside of the operational management, and thank you. But righto. So we've got the absence of alcohol as a standalone condition in its own right. Thank you. Is that it? Anything else? So that said, I would like to move that we grant planning permission for this particular application. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Livingston. All those in favour? So we've got 3 in favour. Any abstentions? Those against? I'm in favour. It's carried. Chairs on the chair's vote, casting vote. Thank you very much indeed, colleagues.